Okay, we're going to continue today, starting with the northern kingdom and the actual split that takes place between or within the nation of Israel. And we'll see that God was punishing Solomon for his sin and leading the nation of Israel astray. By taking that kingdom of Israel and dividing it into two countries. And from that time till, which would be around 930 BC, from about 930 to 722, the northern kingdom would last for about 200 more years, and the southern kingdom would last for about 350 more years. Okay, so there would be a continual split. This would not be reconciled until the Bible says it'll happen in the last days when the nation of Israel will be brought back together again. We'll see that a little bit later today. But so we're going to look at this. We're going to actually see that it was Solomon. It was God punishing Solomon. But it also was already in the works. For a long period of time. God's plans don't just, happen in 5 years or 10 years. His plan is laid out over decades and centuries. So we'll see that the nation of Israel was already on a path to a division long before Solomon. Okay, let's pray and then we'll dig into this split today. Thank you, Lord, for your goodness to us. Help us as we understand your word to have wisdom and to understand it properly. God, I pray that you give us a desire, a yearning to know your word and to know the truth. In Jesus' name, amen. So, 1 Kings chapter 12 is where we're going to pick it up now. 1 Kings chapter 12, look at verse number 25. 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 25 is the statement of the split, and Jeroboam takes off and decides to do his own thing with the northern kingdom, of course, voting him in. When you come to chapter 12, verse 1, that actually is where we're going to pick it up. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, and we know this story, they come to Rehoboam and said, lighten the load. You lighten the load, we'll be your servants forever. You don't lighten the load, then we're going to have to take some different measures. Now, lighten the load. Why did Solomon, or what was Solomon doing that was so difficult? Okay, obviously, from the story, he had high taxes. But that's just the beginning. He had forced labor, right? They had all kinds of workers. We looked at this in the last class period where we saw all of the thousands and tens of thousands of workers that he had working for the government a month out of the year. And then on top of that, the taxes and the tithes, of course, to the temple, and on and on and on. There were several other things. So the people were under a heavy load. And of course, Solomon, they had lost a lot of respect for him because of his foolishness and all the women and all the idol worshiping and so on. I was reading a Jewish history website, and they blame the beginning of Solomon's fall on the time that he married the daughter of the Pharaoh of Egypt. And they say that at that point, Solomon's heart went back to Egypt, which the king wasn't supposed to do. And he began to want to please the pharaohs, his father-in-law. He began, and according to a lot of traditions, Song of Solomon is written about that wife from Egypt. He loved her very, very much. His heart was drawn away to the gods of his wives, and especially the one from Egypt. I thought that was interesting that he went back to Egypt in his heart. He went back to Egypt. But there were seeds of distrust between the northern and the southern tribes for many, many years before this story in chapter 12. So let's do a little bit of research, and we'll find that, that these seeds of distrust, we'll see a number of times where this is mentioned, and things that you probably have read and passed over and not thought too much about. And hopefully today we'll point those out, and you'll probably say, whoa, I didn't realize that. By the way, north and south is not the proper way to describe this, really. We always say the northern 10 and the southern 2. Or the Bible hardly ever calls them that. The Bible calls the northern tribes Israel and the southern tribes Judah. If you look it up, the word northern is almost never found in the Bible. In the north, it's talking about the north side of a hill or the north side of a river or something like that when it's dividing up the tribes in the book of Joshua. So let's look at a few passages I think will help us to see that in the people's minds they had already accepted a split. 2 Samuel chapter 2 verse 10. We'll start there. We've got about at least six passages here that we'll look at. 2 Samuel chapter 2 verse 10. I went through every time that the word Israel is used, which is used thousands of times in the Bible. I started at the beginning. I didn't go through every single time, but I started at the beginning and worked my way all through this time period that we're looking at. And here in 2 Samuel chapter 2 is one of the first mentions of an actual different entity. 2 Samuel chapter 2, this is where Saul has been killed. And David now, who was a fugitive on the run, he is now, expected to take over the kingdom. And if you've never thought about it, isn't it odd that he became the king of Judah for 7.5 years first, and then he became king over all of Israel? Right there you have a split. You've got two different entities. They obviously have different interests. They have some different occupations. People in Judah were not necessarily farmers. Okay, people in Judah were, for the most part, it was very hilly. They did farm some, but it would have been not your open fields of the plains or your open fields of the Armageddon Valley and so on. The people would have lived very different, so they had different interests. 2 Samuel 2:10. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel and reigned 2 years, but the house of Judah followed David. Now, I know it's his tribe. So the tribe that David was from is following after him. And the rest of Israel, at this point, is still following the family of Saul. Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin, just to the north of the tribe of Judah. And that's exactly where the split takes place. When the northern tribes go their way, the split is just on the north side of Jerusalem between Judah and Benjamin. And it goes on out to the west more, and some other tribes. But primarily it's between Judah and Benjamin. No, to me, that is not just coincidental that in 1 Kings chapter 12, that's where the split takes place. This is something that's been brewing. Sorry, I like coffee. For a long period of time. Okay? So here's the first mention of a house of Judah. One of the first mentions of a house of Judah, a separate entity following after David, and the rest of them following a different king, Ishbosheth, who we've already looked at. All right, go to chapter 3, 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 10. Well, let me back up to verse 7. Saul had a concubine, Ishbosheth said to Abner, wherefore hast thou gone to my father's concubine? Then was Abner very wroth for the words of Ishbosheth, and said, am I a dog's head? And you know the story because we looked at it. Verse 9, so do God to Abner and more also, except as the Lord has sworn to David, even so I do to him. I'm going to switch to David. Verse 10, to translate the kingdom from the house of Saul and to set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah. Over Israel and over Judah. Now, I'm just pointing out that these are two separate entities. They're two separate entities. And this is the way they would split eventually in our lesson that we're looking at. Over Israel and over Judah. From Dan even to Beersheba. From the north, far north, all the way down to Beersheba. That was the title of our trip to Israel. We went all the way south, started at Beersheba, and worked our way up to Dan, and then a few other places in between after that. 2 Samuel chapter 19. 2 Samuel chapter 19 now. This is now during the story of Absalom and his trying to take the kingdom away from his father David. And right at the end of that story, chapter 19, verse number 40, David is on his way back. Let me see here. Yes, David is on his way back into Jerusalem to take the throne back. And remember, we mentioned a couple of these names. Barzillai, who was very old, and he sent his servant Chimham with him. You didn't have that on a test, thankfully. Chimham, verse 40, went on with him, and all the people of Judah conducted the king, and also half the people of Israel. Where's the other half? Right. The other half had turned against David very willingly. Very willingly. We don't like you, David. We like your son instead of you. This is a problem. Behold, all the men of Israel came to the king and said unto the king, why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen thee away and have brought the king and his household and all David's men with him over Jordan? Now, without going, the men of Judah came to David and said, we're taking you back as our king. And half the men of Israel said to the men of Judah, wait a second. You know, you're not just going to win brownie points with him by taking him back as your king. He's our king also. We have the right to bring him back. We're going to help bring him back. It's an odd story that's taking place, but I'm convinced if you look at it, what's going on is that there's a divide between these people. The men of Israel feel like they are left out. The men of Judah say, this is our king over here. The David's our king. And the men of Israel say, wait, he's our king too. Keep reading. All the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, verse 42, because the king is near of kin to us. Wherefore then be ye angry for this matter? Have we eaten at all of the king's cost? I mean, did he bribe us? Did he feed us and promise us all kinds of, fatty foods, welfare food? No. Or hath he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, we have 10 parts in the king, and we have also more right in David than ye. Now, I don't know how that's true, other than the fact that they had 10 tribes. But look at that. This is the first time, I looked it up, it's the first time that there's a 10 and a 2 mentioned in regards to the tribes. All right? 10 and 2. We have 10 parts in the king. Why? And we have also more right in David than ye. Why then did ye despise us, that our advice should not be first had in bringing back our king? And the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. Yeah. Fierce. And there happened to be there a man of Belial whose name was Sheba. Now we touched on the story of Sheba already. The son of Bichri, a Benjamite. Here's a Benjamite. Where's he from? The northern tribes. Yes?
I was going to say that 10 and 2 thing. With the story of Joshua and the 12 spies went out. There's 10 that didn't.
No. I checked. I thought of that too. I said, whoa, if these 2 good spies are from the southern, and it is not. It is not. I looked. Joshua is from Ephraim in the north, and Caleb is from Judah in the south.
In Aramaic, I think it's Benjamin.
Right. No, I said, whoa, if this is fitting, this is off the charts, and it was not. We have no part in David. Sheba, a Benjamite. He blew a trumpet and said, we have no part in David, neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. Oops. We have no part. We're not being represented. That's what he's saying. He's a king, but he doesn't act like our king. You ever feel that way? We have a president who doesn't think that we matter, you know? Only certain people matter. So every man of Israel went up from after David and followed Sheba, the son of Bichri. But the men of Judah clave unto their king from Jordan even to Jerusalem. All right, we got a problem. This is a recipe for disaster right here. There's a split going on. They're loyal to different people. David came to his house at Jerusalem. The king took the 10 women, his concubines, who had left to keep the house. He put them in war. They were shut up to the death. He gets Amasa, the captain of Absalom's army, brings him in and so on. Of course, they go after Sheba and kill him. But anyway, so here we see a division going on, and it doesn't look like it's resolved other than the fact that Sheba gets killed towards the end of the chapter. Does it say? I didn't look that up. About Sheba. No, I didn't. Anyway. Yes, Josh?
Sorry, rabbit trail, but it's kind of back to another lesson earlier. But in 2 Samuel 20, verse 3, he shut up all the concubines in a ward and left them there until they died.
Mm-hmm.
So he just locked them away and
Yep.
away the key. Why did he do that?
I don't know, but I haven't studied this much, but I keep on hearing in the news of Middle Eastern countries still doing things like this. When a woman is molested, the woman is punished.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand exactly the reasoning. It doesn't make sense to me. You think the guy who did the wrong would get killed, but...
Well, it's in the Levitical law that if a woman's raped and she doesn't cry out or whatever, or even if she doesn't, I think there's even a case that even if she does, but she was in a certain place, that it is her fault because she should have been with a man or shouldn't have been going that direction.
Yeah, but this is David's fault.
Yeah.
They're his concubines. How do you say one part of this is okay, and the whole thing's a big mess? That's the way I look at it. I mean, I have people come to me with all these problems, and things on the bus route. I'm sure you do too. And you're just like, well, you're both wrong. I don't know what to tell them. You're a little bit more right than he is here, but he's a little bit more right than you are here.
Right.
It's just, and I don't know what to say about that. Sir?
So just marry one wife. Right?
Marry one wife. That's the right thing to say. Okay, let's move on. 1 Kings chapter 1. 1 Kings chapter 1. Here's Solomon now coming on the throne. 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 35. King David is going to make a king out of Solomon, and he brings Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet. God save King Solomon. Verse 35, then you shall come up after him, that he may come and sit upon my throne, for he shall be king in my stead, and I have appointed him to be ruler over Israel and over Judah. Oh, that's bad. Oh, yeah. Both of you groups. I thought they were one group. I thought they were the 12 tribes of Israel. I thought they were the sons of Jacob. It's not, I thought, the 10 sons of Jacob and the 2 sons of Jacob. It is a bad recipe here going on. Over and over again, you see references. I'm convinced that we could look back more clearly at this time period. We would see 2 very distinct types of people. The people of Judah lived differently than the people up in the northern kingdom. Very differently. All right, 1 Kings chapter 10. 1 Kings chapter 10. Verse number 9. 1 Kings chapter 10, verse number 9. Here's the Queen of Sheba. Oops, did I have the wrong verse? First Kings 10:9. That's what I have written down. And that's not what I was looking for. Okay, well, I guess I gave you everything I'm going to because I can't find another one. All right, so this has been leading. Now, I believe that one of the biggest evidences from before this time period that the nation of Israel was that there was different interests was at the time of Sheba. When you have 10 parts and 2 parts, when you have very clearly the men of Israel already wanting to follow after a different king. And so when Solomon does the wrong things and loses respect and makes too high demands out of the people, we're going to have a big problem coming up. And of course, the split takes place. I read that, and you'll read the same thing if you study about this. They say that all the land of Israel went to make Rehoboam, who happens to be the son of Solomon, to go make him king. And they just innocently showed up to make him king, and then they asked him to lighten the load, and he said no, and then the whole thing blew up. And I just don't believe that stuff like that happens that quick. I've always thought there's more to it than that. And over the years of studying this, I started noticing more and more. Israel and Judah for 50 years before the split takes place. And that just keeps on coming up more and more so. Becca?
Sorry, I did a search. And in 2 Kings 2:32 it says that Abner was the captain of the host of Israel and Amasa was the captain of the host of Judah. Does that have anything to do with it? Like the fact that they were 2 separate captains? Over the different captains?
Well,
Wasn't that back during Saul's
First
reign?
Kings.
Oh.
2 Kings?
First Kings, sorry.
Oh, yes. That's when Amasa, he kills Amasa. Yeah, that would definitely fit in with it. Absolutely. I didn't get every reference, but I wanted to give you enough, so yes.
In the chapter after the one you were saying, chapter 10, in chapter 11, verse 35, it says...
1 Kings 11:35?
Yes, it says, and I will, and will give it unto thee even 10 tribes.
Yes, okay. You're getting ahead in the story. This is the story of when the split takes place, or right before the split takes place. So, all right. Okay, so it's leading up to the split. Northern kingdom versus the southern kingdom. So let's give you some general things about the 2 nations of Israel and Judah. Okay, so first, let's talk about Israel. Well, let's just divide this up a little bit. Judah and Israel. Israel, from this time period, this is about 930 BC. Solomon's death. His son Rehoboam is going to be the one to take over on that side. Jeroboam, the story that Jonathan is referring to, at the end of 1 Kings chapter 11, there's a man on the scene named Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who basically tries to cause an insurrection against the government. And because of that, he has to flee, and he flees, of all places, to Egypt. He goes to Egypt, and the next time you see Jeroboam coming on the scene is when they go to make Rehoboam the king. And Jeroboam innocently shows up. I'm convinced there's more to it. He didn't just say, you know what, if they're going to go make a king, I want to be there. Oh, no. I really believe that he was there kind of as a backup plan, because as soon as the thing falls apart, hey, I'm available, you know. I can do this. So Jeroboam comes on the scene. Anyway, so Rehoboam and Jeroboam are the first leaders of these two kingdoms. Now, there's going to be about 20 kings of Israel and 20 kings of Judah. Kings and queens. There's one queen in there. I don't remember if her name was Hillary or not, but she's probably related. By her behavior, I'd guess she's related. Whew. Athaliah. Yes. Okay. 20 kings. Now, interesting thing about the kings of Judah, all the kings of Judah, except for Athaliah, who was a queen, all the kings of Judah were in the line of David. Okay? Several different lines of David, but still in the line of David. Of course, David had many sons. And so, which son's line, of course, that would be, you have some mixing up there. But anyway, there's a number of good kings over here on the side of Judah. Several good kings. Can you think of any? Quickly. Jehoshaphat. Joash. Josiah. Asa. H. Hezekiah. Okay? Those are some of the good kings, and maybe all the good kings. There's not many. On the northern kingdom, on the Israel side, there are 0 good kings that the Bible actually identifies as good kings. There are several that are not terrible. Okay? But they're all, none of them God says they were good kings. Sorry?
Donald Trump.
Right. He was on the northern kingdom. Okay, so no good kings on the northern side. It's very important to understand. Now, the northern kingdom would last for about another 200 years, as we mentioned. This kingdom was destroyed by the Assyrians in 722 BC. The capital of the northern kingdom was Samaria. First thing Jeroboam does is he makes himself a capital at Shechem. Anybody remember where Shechem is? Nope, it's in the middle, and it's very close to, it's often actually called Shechem or Samaria. The present-day city of Nablus. Nablus is there. It's Palestinian territory. You don't want to go there looking like a Jew. You might not feel very comfortable there. But a little bit later on, the capital was moved from Shechem to a different Samaria, probably a couple miles away, a little bit to the north. And Omri built a different city named Samaria, and that's where for the rest of the time, the land of Israel, the northern kingdom, would be ruled from. Of course, that would be destroyed by the Assyrians. There's a lot of talk in the Bible about the Assyrians coming into the land of Israel and destroying that, and so on. Almost got to the southern kingdom as well, the Assyrians did. Hezekiah Of course, Hezekiah's tunnel was a result of the Assyrians coming into the nation of Israel and then Judah. On the southern side, they were destroyed in 586 BC. And that was, of course, not by the Assyrians, but by the Babylonians. 586. And the capital there remained Jerusalem. All right, so some interesting things. Make sure you know these things about the northern and the southern kingdoms. Okay, we are going to divide according to these two sides. Now, I'm not going to compare them as we go. That just gets too ridiculous. I think we're just going to go with one side, is how I typically do it. We're going to go with the northern kingdom first. And my goal is to finish the northern kingdom. Okay, now we'll go fast through a lot of these and we'll hit on the highlights. The northern kingdom, by the way, had most of the more powerful prophets. Elijah and Elisha were prophets in the northern kingdom. All right? They were dealing with Samaria. They were dealing with Mount Carmel up in the north. The most wicked of the two countries, which still happened to be of the land of Israel, still God's people, the most wicked of the two needed the more powerful message. And so God sent them the powerful prophets. So we're going to start here in the northern kingdom. We're going to start with Jeroboam the first. Jeroboam the first. Okay, I'm going to give you some things. We're going to touch on every king, and some we'll just touch on, and we'll move right on through them. But Jeroboam, obviously, this one is very important because he's the first one and because of the things that he does. All right, first of all, Jeroboam reigned for 22 years in Judah. He reigned for 22 years in Israel. And there were several kings in the land of Judah during his time. He actually reigned, I mentioned for 22 years. That's enough time for Rehoboam, Abijah, the next king in the south, and then part of Asa. You don't need to know all that. But he was given the 10 northern tribes because of Rehoboam's folly. As bad as Solomon was, God sent a prophet. And the prophet came to Jeroboam and said, you're going to get the northern kingdom of Israel. They're going to be you're going to be the king of it. How many tribes? 10 of them. This natural, ongoing, divisive nature of the tribes, you're going to get the northern part of that split. In verse 31 of chapter 11, he said to Jeroboam, take thee 10 pieces. He took a new garment and rent it into 12 pieces, said, take you 10. For thus saith the Lord the God of Israel, behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. Okay, so here's Jeroboam. It's promised that he's going to get the northern kingdom. Of course, the story then in the beginning of chapter 12 takes place where the people come together to make Rehoboam the king. I think it's very interesting that he went to Shechem. Where do we inaugurate our president? We pick the president up and head over to Chicago? No. We do it at the Capitol. We do it where the seat of government is. I don't think it's an accident here that Solomon or whoever, the people of Israel of the north, said, we're going to have this inauguration in our territory. Ours? I thought it was all one. See? There's anyway, it's going on. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel would come to Shechem to make him king. It came to pass, and Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who is yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, thy father made our yoke grievous, now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which you put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. All right, so Jeroboam is there here at the beginning, and of course the split takes place. Look at verse 16. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. But as for the children of Israel which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute. And all Israel stoned him with stones that he died. What did Rehoboam do? He sent his IRS agent to collect more taxes. And they killed him. Well, that's a pretty obvious sign that you're not welcome around here. And so Rehoboam quickly gets in his chariot and heads out down to the south. And, of course, Jeroboam is made the king. All right, let's look at three things concerning Jeroboam's reign. First, Jeroboam's apostasy. Jeroboam's apostasy. All right, first thing he does, he says, my goodness, okay, we got this kingdom, and how are we going to run it? How are we going to rule a kingdom that for hundreds of years, the center of the kingdom is not even where we are? The center of the kingdom isn't really even, it's not really Jerusalem. The center of the kingdom is where the worship of God takes place. That is the unifying factor in the land of Israel. Always was. Okay? Before Jerusalem, it was Gilgal, or it was Ramah, where Samuel lived at. It was wherever the worship of God took place. That's where the people came together. In the book of 1 Samuel, when you see Elkanah and Hannah. Elkanah? I'm getting the right one? Or is that Ruth's? It's Elkanah? All right. And you see Elkanah and Hannah coming to the tabernacle. They didn't live there by the tabernacle. They lived for... Anyway, so they come to the tabernacle. That was the unifying thing about the land of Israel. And all of a sudden, here's Jeroboam says, we have nothing. Down there it is, in the land of Judah. They have the tabernacle, or the temple. Big, beautiful temple. Very much wealth. We don't have much wealth. Lots of problems here. So, his apostasy involves setting up something to where the children of Israel don't go down to the land of Judah. Look at verse 26. Chapter 12, verse 26. Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. That's how powerful this draw is to worship at Jerusalem. They're going to go back there, and they're going to worship there, and then eventually they'll go back to make Rehoboam their king, and then they're going to turn around and they're going to kill me. Verse 27, they shall kill me and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah. So the king gathered his cabinet together, and he said, listen, what do we need to do? And they said, you got to set up your own religion. You got to do something. You got to set up your own religion and make the people feel as if their religion that you're providing them is equal to that in Jerusalem. So his apostasy involves four things. First, he changed the places of worship. He changed the places of worship. What does he do? Verse 29, he makes a golden calf. Verse 29, he set the one in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan. I should have brought my map. If you look at Bethel, it's just to the north of Jerusalem, about 6-7 miles or so. Maybe 10. I don't think it's that far, though. It's just before you get to Jerusalem. If you're traveling from the north, going down, you're used to going to Jerusalem. You go most of the way and you just stop right before you get to Jerusalem, and there you can worship. And then if you live far to the north, listen, it's convenient. You don't have to travel anymore very far. You don't have to go all the way down to Jerusalem. You just go a little bit further north. There's Dan, the city of Dan, and you can worship there. There's a temple. It wasn't beautiful, nearly as beautiful, but there's a temple. There's an altar. These things were made to look the same. Okay, I've been to the altar, the temple. You can see the outline very, very easily of the temple, and the foundation is all there, and where the altar would have stood, and so on. It's very interesting at the city of Dan. You can see all this, but he set up a different place of worship. Change. He also changed the symbols of their worship. He changed the symbols of their worship. S-Y-M, not C-Y-M. Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Now look at this phrase. Behold, thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Does that ring a bell? Aaron said the same words. He set up 1 golden calf. Jeroboam's really got it together. He doubled them. 2 golden calves. And he said the same thing. Behold your God that brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And now Jeroboam is making this same thing. And this thing, verse 30 says, became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And he made a house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not the sons of Levi. That's the third thing. He changed the priesthood. He changed the priesthood. Now, I'm for the little guy. I'm a champion for the underdog. You that have never been able to hold a position before, I stand with you. You that aren't qualified, he didn't say that. I'm sure he comes across as the champion for the little guy. Yes?
Do you think he picked out the wackos that
I don't know.
off the wall with what God did, and it's like,
Yeah, I believe he picked his friends, because we see he had all kinds of friends who. No, I'm sorry, that was Rehoboam. Sorry, never mind. That was Rehoboam. But anyway, he takes people who are not qualified and makes them priests. He changed the priesthood from the sons of Levi to different, anybody. Anybody could be a priest. At the end of chapter 13, it says again the same thing. Verse 33, after this thing Jeroboam returned not from his evil way, but made again of the lowest of the people priests of the high places. Whosoever would, he consecrated him, and he became one of the priests of the high places. Anybody could be a priest. You didn't have to be qualified. He also changed the feasts. He changed the feasts. You can't have people thinking about coming out of Egypt and, the Passover. You can't have people celebrating the first fruits, giving the first of their money to God. Then they're going to think about God all the time. So what does he do? In the end of chapter 12, verse 32, Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, and he offered upon the altar. By the way, there is no Jewish feast in the 8th month, the 15th day of the month. He changed the feast. It never says what the feast was. He just made up a feast. Look it up. Look at the next chapter. It talks about it at the end also. He made up a feast. Hey, they have feasts. Y'all are used to having feasts and big get-togethers. we need to do that again, So we'll have a barn raising, or something. No, I'm kidding. Feast days, just anything. He also changed the days of the feast. In other words, the timing of the feast. He changed the times. Lots of changes. Yes?
It's supposed to be something similar to a holiday.
Sorry, what?
Are these feasts supposed to be something similar to what we would call a holiday?
Yeah, generally, yeah. You mean as far as like what he's doing?
Right.
Not really a reminder of a specific thing, but more so just...
Relaxation.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Take a scriptural, biblical holiday and turn it into Turkey Day. All right, Jeroboam's apostasy. Let's move on. Jeroboam's altar. Jeroboam's altar. Let's look at some things about this altar. Jeroboam has a new altar built in Bethel, of course, and in Dan as well. But he goes to evidently, it looks like it's the dedication ceremony for the altar at Bethel. And here's where chapter 13, it gives this great story of Jeroboam dedicating this new thing, and he's all excited, that we have a substitute now for the real thing, for Jerusalem. And here he is at Bethel. Behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel. Notice that. Where's he from? Out of Judah. So he traveled up into this hostile territory. And he comes there to this altar, this dedication ceremony. And I'm sure he had press credentials with him to get in. And he cried against the altar. If you don't know what that means, that's Brother Cloud's way of getting into these places. He always says, I have press credentials. He cried against the altar in the word of the Lord and said, now, I can just picture, here's some elaborate feast going on, and these, lowly bums, the lowest of the people who were taken and had nice big robes put on them, probably with crosses on them and things. No, I'm kidding. But they were all decorated, and they had all this feast going on. And a ceremony. And all of a sudden, a heckler. That's what they would have called. That's what we would call him. The media would call him. A heckler speaks out and says, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born into the house of David. The house of David. We have no part in David. Oh yeah? You watch. He's coming. It's 300 years away still, but he's coming. That's how long it would be before Josiah, before this prophecy would be fulfilled. There shall be a child born into the house of David, Josiah by name, and upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. He's going to come and he's going to burn the bones of you, priests, that burn incense upon this altar. And he gave a sign the same day, saying, this is the sign which the Lord has spoken. Behold, the altar shall be rent, and the ashes that are upon it shall be poured out. And came to pass, when King Jeroboam heard the saying of the man of God, which had cried against the altar in Bethel, he put forth his hand from the altar, saying, lay hold on him. And his hand shriveled up, and he couldn't pull it back. And it completely dried out. No blood. A dead piece of flesh sticking out. Just like that. And the altar, sure enough, just like the man of God said it would happen, the altar pops open. I can just imagine these big stones. And the stones just go and just cave out, and all the ashes come piling out of the side of the altar. And everybody probably shrieked or gasped or something. And lo, it happened exactly as he said it would. And here's their king standing there with a shriveled up arm. And the king answered and said unto the man of God, entreat now the face of the Lord thy God, and pray for me, that my hand may be restored me again. And the man of God besought the Lord, and the king's hand restored him again, and became as it was before. King said unto the man of God, come home with me, and refresh thyself, and I will give thee a reward. I want to give you a gift. That's really what it means, a gift. The man of God said, no, if you give me half thine house, I will not go in with thee. Neither will I eat bread nor drink water in this place. It's about 10 miles for me to get back to the border. I'm not stopping for bread or water. That's how contaminated you are. For so was it charged me by the word of the Lord, eat no bread nor drink water. So he went another way and returned not by the way that he came to Bethel. He didn't want them to find him. He wanted to sneak back to the land of Judah. And of course, the rest of the story is kind of, for my story, kind of irrelevant. We're looking at Jeroboam, but that man of God died because he went back to an old prophet's house who said, the Lord told me to tell you to come. And he listened to him. All right, so Jeroboam's altar. Several things concerning the altar. We see there's a prophecy made here. As Jeroboam offers a sacrifice, the man of God, whose name we don't know, by the way, foretells that a future king will defile this altar by burning on it the bones of the very priests who are sacrificing at it. There's a prophecy about Josiah, and this is a great prophecy. 300 years in advance of when it would take place. Named him. Named him. There's the prophecy. There's also the proof. There's a false altar that's split and ashes poured out, and Jeroboam's hand withered. Everybody knew this is a real prophet. And then third, we see the prophet's bad mistake. He's stopped by an old prophet who lies and convinces him to come to their house for supper. He's rebuked for the disobedience and told that he'd die before he reached home. And he's still left on a donkey. Boy, if I'd have known that, I'd have stayed right there. Said, I'm not leaving in it. Of course, he'd have had a heart attack or something. But he leaves on his donkey, and a lion comes out, kills the prophet, stands over the top of him, and lets the donkey walk away. And everybody knew that that was exactly the way it was supposed to be. All right, so Jeroboam's apostasy, his altar, and then in chapter 14, Jeroboam's meeting with Ahijah. Ahijah is an old prophet by this time. Ahijah was the prophet in chapter 11 who told Jeroboam that he's going to be the king of the northern tribes of Israel. And Ahijah, of course, is a prophet of God, and Jeroboam doesn't get along with him. So, chapter 14, verse 1, at that time Abijah, the son of Jeroboam, fell sick. Jeroboam said to his wife, arise, I pray thee, and disguise thyself, that thou be not known to be the wife of Jeroboam. Get thee to Shiloh. Behold, there is Ahijah the prophet, which told me that I should be king over this people. Take some food with you. He'll tell you what shall become of the child. And Jeroboam's wife did so, and arose and went to Shiloh and came to the house of Ahijah. But Ahijah could not see, for his eyes were set by reason of his age. And the Lord said to Ahijah, behold, the wife of Jeroboam cometh. He forgot that God was on Ahijah's side and just told him, hey, she's coming. Get ready. Thus and thus shalt thou say unto her, for it shall be when she cometh in that she shall feign herself to be another woman. And it was so when Ahijah heard the sound of her feet as she came in at the door that he said, come in, thou wife of Jeroboam. Why feignest thou thyself to be another? For I am sent to thee with heavy tidings. Go tell Jeroboam, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, for as much as I exalted thee from among the people, made thee prince over my people Israel, and rent the kingdom away from the house of David, and gave it thee, and yet thou hast not been as my servant David, who kept my commandments, who followed me with all his heart to do that only which was right in mine eyes, but hast done evil. Provoked me to anger. Therefore, behold, I will bring evil upon the house of Jeroboam. Your son's going to die. Verse 12. When thy feet enter into the city, the child shall die. Verse 17. Jeroboam's wife rose upon her, came to tears, and when she came to the threshold of the door, the child died. Imagine being a mother. she knew the whole way home she would not see her son again alive. And literally, as she walks to the door, the child dies. Heartbreaking. All right. Verse 20. The days which Jeroboam reigned were 22 years. He slept with his fathers, and Nadab, his son, reigned in his stead. Let me see if I'm missing anything here. Nadab would be the only son or the only family member of Jeroboam to reign. In other words, Jeroboam's family line would be cut off. Your name's going to be gone out of Israel, except that you were a bad king. Your reputation would be around still, but your name would be gone. Okay, we will stop there for today. Jeroboam the first and the split between the northern and the southern kingdoms. And the southern kingdoms. And the southern kingdoms. And the southern kingdoms. And the southern kingdoms.